Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is, well, it's focused and frankly, it's vital. We are taking a deep look at the latest Global Terrorism Index analysis.
This is the 2024 report, so it's covering all the data from 2023 and, what trends are shaping things now.
Exactly. And the goal here is to really identify where the global threat landscape has fundamentally shifted.
And before we even touch the big numbers, we absolutely have to establish a crucial piece of context.
Okay.
It's a major caveat that's just baked right into the GTI's definition. The index, it only tracks violence by non-state actors. It deliberately excludes state repression.
So just to be clear, if a government or its military commits violence against its own people, that doesn't make it into this report as terrorism.
Not at all.
That seems like a really important line to draw. What's the direct impact of that exclusion on the numbers we see?
It creates a kind of artificial statistical distortion that you really need to keep in mind as you listen. The clearest example is Afghanistan. The Taliban went from being the world's most prominent non-state actor to the de facto government in August 2021. So the moment that happened, their actions just stopped being counted.
Which means Afghanistan's big drop in the rankings, what was it, from first all the way down to ninth? Doesn't necessarily mean less violence on the ground?
Not at all. It's just a change in who's pulling the trigger, officially speaking. A change in political status, not a change in, day-to-day safety for people.
That context is vital.
It is. Okay, so now let's get to the central paradox from the 2023 data, because it's stunning. Global deaths from terrorism spiked by 22%.
22%, that's the highest it's been since 2017.
Exactly. But, and here's the paradox, the actual number of terrorist incidents of individual attacks fell by 22%.
Wait, how does that even work? That just doesn't seem to make mathematical sense unless the attacks themselves are completely different now.
It signals a profound tactical shift. I mean, the key takeaway is that attacks are becoming dramatically more lethal.
So fewer attacks, but much deadlier outcomes.
Precisely. We saw the lethality rate just soar from 1.6 fatalities per attack in 2022 to 2.5 in 2023. That is the highest rate we've seen since 2015.
That's a huge jump. So what does the analysis say about how they're doing this? I mean, is this a targeted strategy or are they just getting lucky?
Oh, this is absolutely a targeted strategy. It implies a few things are happening at once. First, they're getting better at picking high-value, high-density targets.
To maximize casualties.
Right. Second, a shift toward more complex coordinated attacks. Think, simultaneous bombings designed to just overwhelm security forces.
And I imagine the weapons themselves are changing.
For sure. Third, they're using more high-impact devices like larger or more sophisticated car bombs. It shows groups are prioritizing impact over volume now.
Okay, let's unpack the geographical shift because the global map of terrorism looks completely different now. And that's a huge development that might surprise a lot of people.
It's been decisively redrawn. The epicenter has moved from the Middle East and North Africa, Yemen, South Asia, to the Sahel region of Sub-Saharan Africa.
And the concentration of violence there is what?
It's stunning. The Sahel now accounts for over 50% of all global terrorism deaths.
Over half. Half the world's terrorism deaths are now in one region. How fast did that shift happen?
Startlingly fast. In 2007, the Sahel was, barely 1% of global terrorism deaths.
1%.
And today, it's over 50. Deaths in that region have gone up nearly tenfold just since 2019. This is not a slow burn, it's a catastrophic escalation.
And the GTI rankings must reflect that crisis.
They do. 5 of the 10 most impacted countries are now in the Sahel. Burkina Faso is at the top of the list, GTI rank 1.
The single most impacted country.
Yeah, it accounts for roughly a fifth of all global terrorism deaths by itself. And you see Mali and Niger right behind, showing really similar collapses.
But while the Sahel is, clearly the defining trend, the report does have a counterpoint, doesn't it? A kind of success story.
It does, and it's a really important one, Iraq. Deaths from terrorism there have plummeted 99% since the peak in 2007.
99%, that's incredible.
It's a massive achievement. For the first time since the index began, Iraq is outside the top 10 most impacted countries. It shows that sustained counterterrorism efforts can work.
So if that model worked in Iraq, why is it so hard to replicate in the Sahel? Why is that crisis just getting worse and worse?
Because the crisis in the Sahel isn't really about military might. It's systemic. The terrorist groups there are exploiting these deep structural vulnerabilities.
So it's a socio-economic problem, a political one, not just a military one.
Exactly. The underlying drivers are endemic.
Let's focus on those. What specifically makes the Sahel so vulnerable?
We're looking at a cascade failure. You have a lack of socioeconomic opportunities, you have deep ethnic polarization, you have chronically weak governance, and critically poor water utilization.
These aren't just background noise then. They actively fuel the conflict.
They absolutely do. Take climate change. It makes water more scarce, which forces herding communities into conflict with farming communities, often along ethnic lines, when the state is too weak to step in and mediate.
Extremist groups do.
Extremist groups like JNIM step in. They offer protection, they offer resources, they offer a kind of brutal, simple justice. They basically co-opt the existing conflict.
So that governance vacuum leads us right to the economic engine of all this. The crime-terror nexus. These groups are funding themselves.
They're running a business model. They form this deep, symbiotic link with organized crime, exploiting illicit economies where the state is weakest.
So they get revenue, and the criminals get protection.
That's the deal. They tax local criminal enterprises, they engage in cattle rustling, and they profit hugely from drug trafficking. The Sahel is a major transit route for cocaine headed to Europe.
And I imagine kidnapping is still a big part of it.
A huge part. For a group like JNIM, kidnapping for ransom was estimated to be like 40% of their revenue back in 2017. But the real game changer right now is probably illegal artisanal gold mining.
Gold mining. How does that feed terrorism?
Well, it's perfect for them. Gold is portable, it's high value, and it's incredibly hard for a weak state to track. So these groups gain revenue and territorial control by taking over gold-rich sites.
They're taxing it, controlling the labor.
And then smuggling the gold out. It gives them a stable income and a physical, economic stake in the territory they hold.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Who are the major groups exploiting these conditions? Islamic State is still considered the deadliest network, right?
It is. IS and its affiliates were responsible for over 1,800 deaths in 2024, still the deadliest organization. But their model is highly decentralized, like a network spread across 22 countries.
And within that network, the one that really seems to worry international security services is ISK, Islamic State Khorasan.
Right, ISK. And what's fascinating here is that they've evolved into the group's most internationally active branch. They specialize in these high-impact external attacks, like we saw in Russia and Iran.
And they do this without holding much territory.
Exactly. They use a sophisticated, multilingual digital caliphate to pursue these operations.
What does a digital caliphate actually look like in practice? How do they go from just propaganda to actually guiding attacks?
It's remote command and control. Instead of needing physical training camps, ISK operators in, say, the Khorasan region use encrypted channels to guide what they call hybrid plots.
Hybrid plots?
Yeah, so they'll provide targets, give instructions on bomb making, and even monitor the plot's progress in real time. It lets them project lethal force across continents without ever leaving their keyboards.
Meanwhile, back in the Sahel, IS's big rival, JNIM, is the dominant force.
That's Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin. They're the official al-Qaeda affiliate there. And unlike IS, their goal is more localized, more territorial.
So they want to establish a local governance structure.
Right, by pushing out state forces and any Western presence. Yeah. And they were the second deadliest group globally in 2024. Their lethality has also just soared to almost 10 deaths per attack.
And this is all happening in a geopolitical context that's making things worse, with the Western retrenchment.
That's a huge factor. Western forces, the U.S., France, they're pivoting their focus away from counterterrorism and back toward great power competition. That creates a security vacuum.
But if the threat is getting this concentrated and this lethal, why would they pivot away?
It's about resource allocation. From their perspective, localized terrorism is seen as a lower-tier risk compared to, say, threats from Russia or China.
And that withdrawal creates an opening for those rivals.
It absolutely does. Russia, through groups like Africa Corps and China, are expanding their influence in the Sahel, often providing support with fewer strings attached to the local military juntas.
A dangerous substitution. We should also briefly mention the risk in Syria. The fall of the Assad regime in December 2024 created a new power vacuum.
Absolutely. The Levant is still highly volatile. IS is actively looking to exploit that vacuum for a potential comeback in its old heartland. So this whole map could shift again very quickly.
Okay, let's pivot our focus completely now to the threat in Western countries, which has a totally different character. Incidents there hit a 15-year low in 2023.
Yeah, only 23 attacks. The scale is vastly different, but the nature of the threat is what's evolving.
And the big shift is motivation, right?
It is. Politically motivated terrorism has now overtaken religious terrorism as the primary driver in the West. And while far-left groups commit more attacks, far-right groups have been significantly more legal over the last decade.
And these are almost all carried out by lone actors, individuals who radicalize themselves online. So how do security services even begin to manage that kind of unpredictable threat?
That's the challenge, prediction. The base rate for terrorism in the West is so low that standard risk models just don't work. So instead, experts rely on threat assessment tools. One of the most critical is the TRAP-18.
TREP-18. Okay, break that down. What is it, and how is it different from just a checklist?
TRAP-18 stands for Terrorist Radicalization Assessment Protocol 18. It's what's called a structured professional judgment tool. It is explicitly not an actuarial model that spits out a probability score.
So it's not predicting the future.
No. It's a framework to help analysts weigh specific risk factors to determine urgency and where to put resources, whether the ideology is jihadist, far-right, or far-left.
So it gives them a common language to talk about risk. What are some of the core components they look at?
The protocol has 18 indicators, split into two buckets. First, you have 8 proximal warning behaviors. These are dynamic things that happen close to the time of a potential attack.
Like what?
Like pathway behavior, which is researching or planning an attack, or fixation, which is this intense, unhealthy preoccupation with a person or a cause.
Okay, so those are the short-term warning signs. What are the distal characteristics?
Those are the 10 long-term structural vulnerabilities. Things like dependence on a virtual community where their whole social life is online, or failure in intimate pair bonding, a severe relationship failure.
And those distal factors identify people who are vulnerable to radicalization.
Exactly. And that radicalization is happening faster than ever. The shift from curiosity to action can now happen in just a matter of weeks, not months. The digital space just accelerates everything.
So if part of the strategy is threat assessment, like TRP-18, let's talk about the solutions that address the root causes. That brings us to rehabilitation and reintegration, or R&R.
R&R is absolutely essential, particularly in a place like the Sahel. And we basically see 2 dominant models being used globally.
What's the first one? The more personalized approach.
That's the case management model. It's highly individualized. You get tailored services, psychological support, job training, economic help. It's effective for, say, managing a small number of high-risk returnees.
But the downside?
It's incredibly resource-intensive and expensive. It's very, very hard to scale up for the kind of mass disengagement you need in a huge conflict zone.
Which is where the second model comes in, the collective one.
That's the community-based integration model. This is led by local actors like clan elders, and it's designed to benefit the entire community, not just the ex-fighters.
So everyone gets something, which reduces stigma.
Right. It's scalable for large numbers of low-level members, but its limitation is that it's probably not enough for the really high-risk, deeply radicalized individuals.
So the real answer has to be a mix of both.
Precisely. The necessary conclusion is that you need a flexible, hybrid model that blends intensive care for the high-risk cases within a broader, community-focused strategy.
And if you're talking to policymakers, what's the one guiding principle they have to follow for R&R to work?
The single most essential principle is this. R&R programs have to deliver tangible benefits to the entire host community. If the local population sees all this money being spent only on former militants while they're still struggling,
it creates resentment.
It creates immediate resentment and new grievances, which just fuels the next wave of extremism. The community has to be an active partner in security, not a resentful bystander.
So this deep dive has really shown us 2 massive accelerating challenges. On one side, the Sahel's systemic crisis, and on the other, the West's individualized digital threat.
The whole structure of the threat is decentralizing and adapting.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider, and it's based on that very adaptation. The Russia-Ukraine war has been called a laboratory for modern warfare, and terrorist groups are watching and learning.
The innovations on that battlefield are highly accessible.
Exactly. So how does the widespread availability of low-cost, do-it-yourself weapons, things like AI-enabled drones, 3D printed parts, unmanned sea vehicles, how does all that shift the capability of decentralized groups like ISK and the lone actors in the West? And, crucially, how does policy even begin to respond to a threat where the cost of a lethal, complex attack just keeps plummeting? Thank you for diving deep with us.